Hollywood tough guy, in your opinion? You accept it, of course.
When you say tough guy, do you mean martial artist or just tough guy?
I mean, Steven, for real, if he was on the street and there was a situation, you wanted this Hollywood guy by your side because he could defend himself. It's that hard to think of a legit one?
Can you think of one?
Michael Jai White.
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
DMX once said Steven Seagal talked to him like an old slave master, and he meant every word of it.
Well, you had trouble with Steven Seagal on a film you did together, correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, you know.
He seems like such a doll. It's surprising.
That wasn't some wild exaggeration. That was cold, raw truth. That line alone could have blown up headlines worldwide, but Hollywood made sure it stayed buried. Powerful people were working overtime to protect Seagal's image, sweeping every ugly story under the rug like nothing ever happened. This wasn't no regular Hollywood feud. This was a straight-up clash between one of the realest rappers alive and a man who's been called one of the most toxic, foul-mouthed names in the industry.
You call him white boy mother...
I felt like Steven embarrassed himself. Because, I mean, Steven hired me 3 different times himself. Why? If I'm not a good martial artist.
The Exit Wounds set wasn't a movie set. It was a battlefield. DMX walked into chaos. Real injuries, screaming matches, and a heavy, draining tension that sucked the life out of the whole crew. And at the center of all that madness, Steven Seagal himself, acting like the boss of everyone. The so-called martial arts icon, the slow-talking, ponytail-swinging Aikido master America once worshipped, was really out here stacking lawsuits and scandals like trophies. Behind all that fake calm and phony Zen talk was a man people now describe as unpredictable and downright cruel. And now that DMX and Michael Jai White have both stepped up to tell their stories, the truth is finally shaking the table. Once you hear what they witnessed firsthand, you'll never watch Exit Wounds the same way again.
Steven Seagal was so horrible on such a scale. It was such a huge scale of terribleness that it wasn't undeniable by anyone who was there. I remember at one point he locked himself in this dressing room because he said, "You're saying Hans and Franz could beat me up, and I'm not coming out of the dressing room until you change the sketch." Like, I mean, it was really legendary, craziness.
Seagal used to brag that before Hollywood, he was some mysterious American out in Japan mastering the ancient ways of Aikido. Sounds impressive, right? But dig deeper, and it falls apart fast. Yeah, he trained, but that whole first American to teach Aikido in Japan story? Total Hollywood fabrication. Real martial arts experts been calling that out for decades. The man built his image off smoke, mirrors, and movie magic, and the truth is finally catching up. Steven Seagal didn't just fight his way into fame, he married his way into it. His first wife, Miyako Fujitani, happened to be the daughter of a respected Aikido master in Japan. And thanks to that connection, Seagal got access to her family's dojo, straight up inherited the keys to the empire. That's where his myth began, the mystical foreigner mastering the East act.
I did a movie called Executive Decision.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Oh yeah, all 3 of you saw it. And the first day we get together for rehearsal with the actors and the director, he comes in, "I'm in command. What I say is law. You disagree?" And I started cracking. I was like, I thought he was kidding. We were just hanging out.
Yeah.
And he Aikido'd me against the brick wall. Pow! Knocked all the air out of me. I was like, what? What? Yeah. I mean, what I really want to say is how big and fat he is and how he runs like a... Look at it online. You can see he runs like this. I'm not kidding.
But let's be real, he wasn't enlightened. He was calculated. He built a brand, played the culture card, and finessed his way into power like a pro hustler. Behind that cold, stone-faced stare was a man obsessed with dominance. Seagal wasn't just throwing kicks. He was manipulating everyone around him to stay on top. He turned his calm tone and slow moves into a whole identity, not because it was deep, but because it sold. And while Aikido's a graceful art, it ain't exactly built for blockbuster fights. So what did Seagal do? He spiced it up, added some Hollywood sauce, and made it look deadly. His true weapon wasn't his hands, it was his image. The slick ponytail, the black outfits, the slow-motion walks, that whispery, "I'm wiser than you" talk. It was all part of his act. He knew exactly how to market himself as the silent assassin who didn't need to raise his voice to own the room. And when Above the Law dropped in '88, boom, Seagal went from dojo drama to movie stardom overnight.
I felt like Steven embarrassed himself. Because, Steven hired me 3 different times himself. Why? If I'm not a good martial artist. And then, he hired me for the Nissan Soup ads for Japan. And I was a choreographer and everything else. He hired me for On Deadly Ground, which is a movie he directed, right? Hired me personally. Offered me a role that I didn't really take because I thought it was silly. And then, of course, I'm in the movie with him in Exit Wounds. I never had really anything against him other than, he famously I talked about what he does with, with the stunt guys. But it's ironic that Steven would not call me a martial artist because, it's like, well, when you think of martial arts, you think of being healthy, humble, respectful, discipline, all of that stuff that all has Steven Seagal written all over it, does it not? That's a healthy, humble, respectful guy, would you think?
He became the action hero every Reagan-era fan wanted. A one-man army who broke bones, dropped Zen quotes, and never wrinkled his jacket. Movies like Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, and Under Siege made him look unstoppable. A Navy cook fighting off terrorists on a whole warship. Come on, that was Hollywood fiction at its finest, and people loved it. Seagal had sold the world a fantasy, and they bought every bit of it. But behind all that box office glory, the real Steven Seagal was cracking under ego. Directors called him impossible. Writers said he refused to read scripts. Actors couldn't stand being near him. Then came the nightmare moment, SNL, 1991. Seagal was invited to host, but the whole crew said he was so arrogant and tone-deaf that he tanked every sketch. Julia Sweeney later exposed that he even pitched a creepy idea where a victim falls for her therapist, played by him. That's when whispers became warnings. People stopped calling him difficult and started calling him dangerous. And that's why Seagal ended up banned from Saturday Night Live. For life. Can you believe that? Banned from SNL just for being straight up creepy? That's not just awkward, that's insane. While Seagal was out here embarrassing himself on national TV, real martial artists were watching from the sidelines, and trust me, they were not impressed. Michael Jai White, a legit black belt in multiple fighting styles and a real competition beast, worked with Seagal once and instantly saw through the illusion. To him, Seagal was all show, no substance. Behind the camera, Seagal stayed on his power trip, disrespecting stuntmen, treating martial arts like a party trick, and always running his mouth about who he thought was beneath him. And when it came to black or Latino fighters, his slick comments crossed the line way too often. That's when people started realizing this dude wasn't just arrogant. He was reckless with his words and actions. Then you had Jean-Claude Van Damme, a real kickboxing champion, flexible as a cat and known for his explosive moves. The tension between him and Seagal was pure fire. Seagal went around bragging he could beat Van Damme in a fight. Meanwhile, Van Damme was out here throwing perfect spinning heel kicks while Seagal could barely move in that long trench coat. And when Van Damme finally stepped up at a party and said, "Let's go!"
Well, you had trouble with Steven Seagal on a film you did together, correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
he seems like such a doll. It's surprising.
He hurt, a few people on the set purposely. And it's like, if you're acting and we're working together, I'm trusting you not to, take advantage of the situation and vice versa, and, to do the things he did on the set, man, I was like, yo,
How did he hurt him? Like rushing for a sandwich at the craft service table?
He put one guy's, stunt guy put his head through the window. Really? He was just supposed to act like he hit him. He actually grabbed the guy and pushed his head through the window, and the one move where he has my arms behind my back and we were both supposed to drop to the ground at the same time, You know, on cue, I drop and he stays up, dislocated my shoulder.
Really?
You know, but you know, what goes around comes around, and he ended up hurting himself on the set and was out for 2 weeks. So
good.
Seagal did the unthinkable. He dipped, walked right out the back door like a ghost. No smoke, no fight, just gone. But the craziest story? That belongs to Gene LeBell, the legendary godfather of grappling. Seagal once boasted that nobody could choke him out because of his secret breathing technique. Gene just smiled and said, "Let's test it." Next thing you know, boom. Gene put him to sleep right there on set. Word around the crew was Seagal even lost control of himself when he hit the ground. To this day, Seagal denies it, but multiple witnesses swear it went down exactly like that. And it didn't stop there. On another set, Seagal went rogue and smashed stuntman Finn Thorson right in the throat. No warning, no choreography, just ego on full display. Even after all that chaos, Seagal still had the nerve to say Michael Jai White wasn't a real martial artist. Really? The same Michael Jai White who trained with elite masters and choreographed fight scenes for major films? Seagal must have been living in his own fantasy world. The truth is, Steven Seagal couldn't handle real competition. His whole image was built on being this mysterious lone wolf, but the real fighters, they saw through that act like glass. Behind all the spiritual talk and slow-motion swagger was a man who folded the moment real pressure showed up. By 2001, his career was on life support. Flop after flop, and non-stop stories of wild behavior on set had turned him into Hollywood's biggest headache. Studios stopped answering his calls, and fans had moved on. But Seagal wasn't ready to fade out. He was desperate for a comeback, and that's when Warner Brothers threw him a lifeline. The movie Exit Wounds, a gritty, early 2000s action flick starring Seagal, Michael Jai White, and DMX. It had all the ingredients for a classic: Detroit streets, dirty cops, and intense action. But from day one, that set felt cursed. Seagal showed up acting like the king of the world, barking orders, skipping rehearsals, and disrespecting stuntmen like they were extras. He tossed the script aside, did his own thing, and brought pure chaos. People were getting hurt, for real. One stunt guy caught a hit so bad it sliced his face from cheek to jaw because Seagal wanted the fight to look real. Another time, he allegedly picked a dude up and slammed him headfirst through an actual glass window instead of the breakaway prop one. No warning, no setup, just ego on full blast. Then came the moment that shook everyone. On the very first day of shooting, tragedy struck. Stuntman Chris Lamont lost his life during a car stunt gone wrong. His head hit the pavement, and despite being rushed to the hospital, he didn't make it. The whole cast was shaken, except Seagal, who carried on like it was just another day on set. Crew members were devastated, safety protocols were questioned, and whispers started spreading that Seagal's recklessness might have played a role in the chaos. Now imagine being DMX in the middle of all that. You show up ready to grind, and your co-star treats the set like his personal kingdom. Seagal was talking down to people, skipping cues, and turning fight scenes into real hits. At one point during an arrest scene, Seagal was supposed to take DMX down gently, but instead, he let go early, leaving DMX to fall awkwardly and dislocate his shoulder. That's when patience ran out. And then came the quote that made headlines years later. DMX said Seagal talked to him like an old slave master. That wasn't just frustration, that was deep disrespect. DMX told multiple outlets that Seagal's tone and attitude were off the charts. Dismissive, cold, and outright racist. He wouldn't even say DMX's name, just barked commands like he was talking to a servant. So when cameras rolled again, DMX made sure Seagal felt that disrespect in real time. In the next scene, he hit him for real. No acting, no holding back, no second takes. That was the moment everyone on set realized DMX wasn't just another co-star. He was sending a message loud and clear: you don't talk to a man like that and walk away clean. And when things got too hot in the States, Seagal didn't just dip, he reinvented himself overseas. Over there, he turned into a full-blown poster boy for power. He started pushing pro-Kremlin propaganda like it was his new career path. In one of his latest so-called projects, a movie titled In the Name of Justice, he literally walks through war-torn Ukraine blaming the Ukrainians for their own suffering. Can you believe that? That whole film was nothing but propaganda, painting Russia as noble peacekeepers while twisting the story to make Ukrainians look like villains in their own war. And it didn't stop there. In a 2020 interview, Seagal went completely mask off, calling Ukrainians Nazis. The internet lit him up instantly. People were outraged, calling him out not only for spreading lies, but for pushing rhetoric that sounded flat-out racist. And if that wasn't already embarrassing enough, remember when Seagal jumped into the NFL kneeling protests from across the world? In 2017, while players were peacefully kneeling to stand against police brutality, Seagal popped up from Moscow criticizing them like he was some kind of authority. Nobody asked for his take, and fans were quick to remind him of that. But the truth is, none of this behavior was ever hidden. Everyone in Hollywood knew how he moved. Directors whispered about his temper, producers complained about his ego, and stunt crews warned each other about his reckless behavior. And still, the machine kept rolling. No public takedown, no blacklist, just a quiet fade into obscurity. When the box office numbers started tanking, that's when Hollywood finally let him go. Not because of morals, but because he stopped making money. By the time legends like DMX and Michael Jai White started opening up about what really went down behind the scenes, the industry had already washed its hands clean. Their stories didn't spark a scandal. They just confirmed what insiders had been saying for years. Seagal had been protected, promoted, and eventually discarded when his star power dried up. Steven Seagal finessed his way through decades of fame, controversy, and straight-up manipulation, fooling an entire generation while playing the Zen warrior act. But now, the curtain's closing for real, and this time, it's not part of the movie script. If you made it this far, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more crazy Hollywood deep dives. Was Seagal always shady, or did the industry just pretend not to see it for too long? Either way, this story proves one thing: the truth always finds its way out.